Welcome to the Business of Property podcast. I'm Simon.
I'm Stuart.
We're both property people running our own businesses. This podcast is just us chatting, as we often do, about anything and everything property. This week, I think we're going to talk a bit, at least initially, about rental demand. I've experienced this quite positively recently, but I understand, Stuart, you're finding, or maybe not rental demand lacking, but a lack of actual renters arriving. So why do you think you're struggling a bit?
Yeah, it's probably not about demand. From my side, it's probably as much around using the right channels. Because although we talked about this, so I know we'll talk about the rental demands that you're seeing. But what you're talking about there, just to be clear on this podcast, is so I've got a co-living property. It's one of the new ones we've just developed. And we have 2 rooms filled, but we're still looking for the other 3 to get occupied.
How long has it been on the market, just to give context there?
It's probably been on the market for, I'd say, a couple of months. Really?
So in 2 months, they found 2 occupants?
Yes. The only caveat, and I'm not going to make excuses for them, but the only caveat is we only actually finished the works a few weeks ago.
Oh, okay. So they probably weren't pushing it too hard.
They probably weren't pushing it too hard. However, what I would say is that I'm 4 weeks away from finishing another property. I don't think we've spoken about this one, but we've got a 3-bed masonette, which is coming onto the market. We're still a good 4 weeks away, I would say, of actually finishing the works, which is all ensuite and furnishing in it. And we've got 2 rooms filled. So that will be filled from mid-April onwards, I would imagine.
Presumably that's being marketed with a different agency, or are you marketing it directly, or what are you doing there?
It's being marketed with a different agency. So the challenge that you and I were just discussing before we hit the record button was around the channel that the agent's using. So for the co-living space, the new one, they are only using Rightmove, I believe. Whereas I imagine when you showed surprise, you were thinking SpareRoom.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think Rightmove is really the place or the destination I imagine people go to find shared accommodation. And you do see rooms advertised for rental on Rightmove, but not that many. And as you say, SpareRoom sort of comes to mind much more as the place to go to look for shared accommodation. So why Rightmove? Do you think this is just their bias towards single let advertising normally, or something else?
I think they are predominantly a residential agent. My view is that you'd have it on Rightmove, yeah. So all of my rooms are invariably on Rightmove, but I wouldn't expect that to be the sole channel for the reasons that you've just talked about. And also, if we think about it a little bit more deeply, the demographic of those that are looking for. So the 2 people that have got the rooms, for example, are mid-20s, postgrads, professionals, essentially the exact people that the property's been developed for, which is good. So on that score, I'm not complaining, but essentially, we can't have 3 rooms empty for much longer. I don't know why they wouldn't use SpareRoom, other than what we've just talked about, which is they are a predominantly residential agent, and therefore they think that is the only channel, versus the other agents, which have a myriad of channels. And interestingly, and I will sort of share this small anecdote, when I did have you start having the conversations with the agents around, well, why don't you think we are filling these rooms quickly? This is a brand new property. Everything is brand new. It's really nice. Yes, it's unique. So fair enough if people are viewing it and saying, it's not for me. We've had one of those at least that's just, it's not for me. And I knew that would always be the risk of doing a designed property with specific artwork. However, we're not getting numbers through the door. And inadvertently, or not as directly, but the COVID was used as a potential reason. Yeah, well, there's other things. It wasn't said directly, but what I then said to the agent was, and this is true, I'd taken on 15 rooms since the start of February, and we have filled 13 of those rooms. So I wouldn't I wouldn't necessarily be relying on COVID as the reason for not filling rooms.
Yeah, quite. I heard recently in a landlord forum people discussing the HMO market in Crawley, and the general view is that it's oversaturated, and since demand has dropped out from the aviation industry around Gatwick, the HMO room demand in Crawley has dropped, and hence there's too many available. However, an HMO specialist agency chipped into the conversation to say that they've managed to achieve an average of only 5 to 10% void throughout the whole pandemic. And they put that down to being very proactive in their marketing. They said as they're a reasonable sized agency, they've got a reasonable budget that they put behind promoting rooms when they come available and actually sort of going out and chasing people. So I think that does make a difference.
It makes a huge difference. And that is another key element, is that I don't think in any industry, but certainly not this one, you can expect just to post something up online now and expect people just to come look at it. It does require proactive effort.
Well, you say that. I'm not convinced. So I'll segue into my story. I've got a rental property that has come empty and is now looking for new tenants. And it's a 3-bed house in Red Hill. It's nicely decorated and nicely put together, but it's nothing special really. And I marketed it through OpenRent, so they push it out to Rightmove and Zoopla and all the other places. I think they say there's over 100 places they push adverts out to, which is ridiculous. But anyway, as far as I see, they all just come in through the OpenRent dashboard. And within 24 hours of just posting an advert online, I'd had 6 or 7 inquiries, and I was able to book a day of viewings the first weekend after that advert. And unfortunately, due to various things, no one actually ended up taking it after that first weekend. So it went through another week's cycle for the next weekend when the tenants could help with viewings again. And I'd had nearly 30 inquiries by that second weekend. And it's just seemed to be crazy demand compared to the last time I marketed this property a couple of years ago.
Is this it's a residential, so it'd be a family unit or couple buying it?
Yeah, I mean, there are 3 sharers in it at the moment. So it can be a small sort of HMO situation, although they're all on a single tenancy. My preferred option is a family. However, there was one set of sharers who did view again on this time. They haven't got it. It is now let agreed and going through referencing and stuff, and to a family. But yeah, it could be sharers as well.
Yeah, well, that's crazy, isn't it? Because I was thinking in the market that I'm in, I'm thinking specifically for co-living stroke. People call HMO properties, that we are having to put definitely more effort in. But then from a residential perspective, as I mentioned before in this podcast, we put our studio flat up, and even though that was advertised, we had something like 70 inquiries in a matter of days, and I had filled up just a single day, 10 viewings, 24 hours. So I'd seen that on the residential side, but it's interesting that you're seeing that demand.
Yeah, it's crazy. Because I had to wait until the next weekend, there were people who'd responded sort of earlier in the week who were chasing me later in the week saying, is it still available? Can we view, please? And because there were so many people, and I'm trying to do this in so-called spare time, I was actually a little bit lax in responding to people, as in I let them collect for a few days before I then did a bunch of batch responses. And yeah, I find I was having to sort of go through the list with the sort of pre-screening questions they answer on OpenRent and prioritise who I responded to, because there just wasn't enough time. So it was a case that the ones I thought were most likely to be a good fit, I would phone and talk to, and the lower fitting ones would just get an email response back and see if anything went from that. But yeah, it's surprising. And the I'm very surprised you had so much demand for a short let as well. I don't think we've mentioned it since we started recording, but we mentioned before recording that was advertised on Rightmove as well, which again, I'm surprised is the right venue to find people interested in short lets. Yeah, I mean, why Rightmove for that one?
Well, it wasn't just Rightmove. It would have been pushed out to a number of different channels, but Rightmove was the key one, I think.
You self-marketed that, didn't you, through a digital tool?
Yeah, there's software called Visum, which was really good. Pushes out the advert to a number of different channels. My view on that one is that the people that were looking, the bona fide people that is, were looking for a short-term solution because they were looking to buy on a longer term, but obviously given where we were, this was the back end of last year. So my immediate thinking on that from my marketing background is that they're already on that channel. So it's less of an obstacle because they're already looking for their purchase property on Rightmove. So they'll probably go, let's have a quick look on, see if there's anything in the rental market before they jump to another portal which might be more suited to. So that was my view on that. And then obviously my experience has shown that some people went on that looking for a short term, but maybe didn't have the intention short term.
That's another story, yes. which we talked a little bit about a few weeks ago, I think. So
yeah, we did.
People are curious, they can go back to the back catalogue and find that. Does Visum tell you where the inquiry comes from, or did you indeed ask anybody? So do you know if they actually did find it on Rightmove or one of the other channels that the Visum pushes it out to?
Yeah, I can't remember whether or not it tells us that information. I don't remember seeing it. I think Rightmove was the predominant channel though, without reviewing the template. But I'm pretty sure it's the key one.
Very interesting. I mean, OpenRent doesn't tell me where the inquiries come from at all, and I haven't asked anyone. But yeah, it would be interesting to know that sort of information, especially for sort of the less standard single let type inquiries.
Yeah, as you say, I mean, at that time, we were so inundated with responses coming through that you're kind of just managing that. But what I really liked is the option we had an initial email. So as soon as someone requested information, they would get an email straight back, because my experience in life and business tells me that not everyone reads what's on the description. So the first thing was, are you clear that this is a short-term let? And, a few other key points. And by the way, we will be holding viewings on this day and this day only. So if you can't make that. And that was quite helpful at actually just probably discounting, 30 to 40% of the inquiries, of which there were a lot. Because then some people had a full communication, but never with me. That the email would go out and they said, "Oh yeah, sorry, no, I didn't realise it was only short term. Thank you anyway." And it's like, "Oh, good, I didn't even have to get involved." So that's quite helpful. Yeah,
OpenRent Delay do something similar, but I didn't do the automatic response thing with them. However, they do a sort of pre-application screening questions, I think is what they call it. So, do you have pets? Do you smoke? What's your salary? That's one of the ones they ask. Are you looking for furnished or unfurnished? And what period of let are you looking for? The sort of standard questions. And I was certainly able to use those to help me prioritise people. Although OpenRent allows tenants to apply in a number of different ways. The standard way is you create an account on OpenRent and fill in a digital form, or phone them up and an agent talks to the prospective tenant and runs them through the questions and fills in the form for them effectively. However, they also have a system where prospective tenants can leave voicemails. And when the voicemails come through in your OpenRent dashboard, they come through with these screening questions filled in. However, it transpires after me phoning OpenRent and exchanging some emails with them, they don't actually collect that information for voicemails. So they obviously ask the tenant to leave certain information in the voicemail, which some of them do and some of them don't. But the details that then come through on the dashboard page relating to their salary and whether they smoke and what they're looking for in terms of tenancy length, whatever, is basically fictitious. It's made up, which is a shame because I reduced priority on some people based on that information before I realised this. So hopefully I didn't miss out on any ideal tenants in that process. So yes, one to watch out for when you're having to deal with such an influx of inquiries and prioritising.
Yeah.
You need to be careful of the digital tools you're using and the information that's actually presented to you.
Yeah, and then just final point on the information that's presented to you, just check Visum does give you the channel that it's come through, but it's very manual. It could sort by.
Oh, that's really interesting that they do that. That's really cool.
It is good, yeah. And I've just checked top and bottom, but the first few were Rightmove, but one was on the market. So actually, if we're being more planned about this another time, we can have a look at that and give our own views.
Yeah, work out some percentages and see if we can work out market share for the different portals. Yeah. With 70 odd applicants, it's probably almost a representative sample. Yeah,
well, I'm sure Patma can help with that.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know, because I don't get to see any visibility of applicant. I do see where properties are marketed, and I certainly know which portals people with the Patma browser extension installed are visiting most. So yeah, I could probably have a look at some visitor market share type information.
I did a quick random check, and it was Rightmove, Zoopla, and on the market. So it looks like those were the key portals. Kind
of what you'd expect, but in sort of general residential lettings, but not what I would expect for short term. I would have thought other things would crop up in the short term. Although, having said that, you've got SpareRoom for HMO shared living type things, but I'm not sure what springs to mind for short term. I mean, obviously, really short term holiday lets, you've got Airbnb as the predominant player, but short term, as in sort of a couple of months, I'm not sure where you would go for that. Are you aware of anything?
No, I think, and that's probably the thought process, isn't it? You'd start with Airbnb, but then if it's going to be a longer period of time from a short let perspective, my new learning is that over 31 days you're then challenged. So maybe there is a gap in the market there, if there is indeed a market.
Yeah, well, that's the question. I know from service accommodation operators that I've talked to in the past, they often go out and do sort of local networking and find local businesses who want to take on those sort of short, but not holiday short, sort of letting periods. But yeah, I've not heard anyone mentioning. Well, yeah, I'm not sure I've heard anyone mentioning people really looking for that other than through businesses. And I wonder if that's a temporary demand due to the pressures that the pandemic's created, or whether it is actually a real demand that's out there in the longer term. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, on the people you were talking to for your short-term let? Do you think it was just a temporary pressure from the pandemic situations?
Yeah, I would say a percentage of those that I met for the viewings, and then we had to essentially cancel the viewings because the first 3 people that viewed all wanted the property. So we cancelled. But of those, one was, two of the three were looking to buy somewhere and just wanted to relocate in the area whilst everything else got sorted. And then the third, he was getting placed with work on a fixed term contract, so wasn't sure that he would be around for much more than 3 months. So yeah, so based on that very small cohort of that was definitely a.
Did you talk to people prior to arranging viewings at all? So when I've been doing my letting process recently, before anyone got a viewing, even though OpenRent had asked screening questions, I would phone them up and talk to them for 10 to 15 minutes about where they're moving from, who would be renting the property, their current rental situation, their job situation, the reasons they're moving, and also rechecking the general screening things. So check their salary is actually high enough to pass a credit check for the rent, and check whether they've got any pets or smoke or all the standard bits and pieces. And only if people actually still seemed suitable would I then offer a viewing. Did you go through any of that prior to your short-term let viewings, or did you just sort of say, here's the day, here's the time slot, can you turn up?
Yeah, pretty much that. So we didn't do any of the the pre-screening was just that they would agree to the short-term nature of it. And I'm not sure if there's any sort of prerequisites on the application. I I mean, I'm definitely a person that I had a call from the first person that viewed and had a very good feeling about her, but my view was that meeting them on the viewing day would give me what I needed for that.
Yeah, I normally in non-pandemic times, the demand was much lower, so I would just go with the viewing straight away, and I would be there at the viewing, so I'd be able to ask all these questions during the viewing, and check sort of the requirements and suitability and things then. And of course, when you actually meet someone, you get a bit of a feeling for them as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas this time, I wasn't even meeting them at the viewing because I wanted to minimise people contact for reducing viral risk. That the tenants were kind enough to do the viewings for me and show people around. So this sort of initial phone call was kind of the only screening contact I would have with these prospective tenants.
Which reminds me, I did one of the viewings, actually. There was a fourth viewing, which I did on FaceTime. She was desperate to see the property, so I walked around with her. As in, I walked around the property with my phone, talking to her and talking her through it, and she really liked the property as well. So,
yeah, that's definitely a new pandemic experience, I think. But I wonder how long that will persist afterwards. I suppose for people who are moving from further away, it may still be a popular option.
Well, the people that have taken the 2 rooms out of the 3 of the building that we haven't quite finished yet, that was a video recording of a 3/4 built property. So no carpets, plastering's only just been done, shower suites weren't even put in, and that was a walk around video. And they've taken 2 of the rooms, so that might be something to do with the younger generation as well. Not putting us in a bucket of not being able to do it, but I think as well there's probably a more acceptance of younger generations to take things digitally as opposed to those of us that want to walk around and touch the walls. And
yeah, speaking of new technology and digitalness, there was a news item that I saw recently that I thought we might just squeeze in before we run out of time today. And this is a service that's being touted by DocuSign. So they obviously provide online e-signature of documents, but generally speaking, something these services haven't been able to do is witnessed documents. So rental contracts, for example, AST, standard tenancy agreements, they don't need to be witnessed. You can just send that out electronically. The person who needs to sign it signs, and it comes back to you, and that's all fine. However, when you're purchasing a property, for example, there are documents in that process that have to be witnessed. So you as a buyer or seller must sign, and then someone standing there witnessing your signing must then also sign that they have witnessed that process. Obviously, in a pandemic world where we're under stay-at-home orders and where we have been in the past, and you can't easily go out and travel to people or see people, and indeed you've got the actual viral transmission risk of seeing people and being in close proximity to witness signatures. This is something that's been a bit harder to do. So when I saw DocuSign advertising an e-signature witnessed system, I thought, oh, this could be really good. You could sort of be the answer to the pandemic process. And the sort of press release based articles that seem to be around are really very vague, don't go into much details. But when you go and read the details on the DocuSign site, quite a long way down in sort of the frequently asked questions bit, it says, does the witness need to physically witness and be present for the signature? And the answer is yes. So while this process can be done electronically and online, you as the signer and your witness both have to actually be in the same location, the same physical location, doing this process. And DocuSign say that they record IP addresses and an estimated geolocation of an IP address in order to sort of bear witness to this fact that you and your witness are together. So yeah, I'm not sure it really answers the question or the problem I was hoping it would answer.
But when you digitally sign something, like now, obviously you can use your own signature or a digital stamp. What would that require of the witness on that?
I assume it's the same. So normally when you witness a document, you have to fill in, you have to sign, but then you also have to fill in your name and address. And I assume that this would be the same. And it does kind of beg the question, what's to stop you witnessing your own document and claiming your Joe Bloggs from down the street?
Exactly. I just saw myself sitting there going, okay, well that's brilliant, because I can just start witnessing everything, because that takes half of my time up.
But then, what stops you from witnessing your own paper documents with wet signatures? I'm sure you could change your handwriting a little bit if you so desired to fill in someone else's name and make up a scrawl that could be their signature. I take it you don't do this.
Well, not that I'd publicly admit on this podcast, but but again, I think there's barriers, isn't there? I think if you're tempted and then you look at the box and you think, oh, well, I've got to sign it and then I've got to write an address in at someone, there's got to go, oh, it's probably just easy to get someone to sign it. But then you've taken those barriers away and just go, well, if I just click there and I've witnessed it, maybe it needs to take a photo of you when you press it. So if you're on your own, that's it, you're done.
Yeah,
Please get informed.
Exactly. The solution I was expecting them to have was far more complex. I thought they'd have the ability to have video calls or something, and they'd record the video. That would be the evidence that you are in communication with someone who can witness you signing the document. And then you could do the signature online on a website, and the video webcam, whatever, recording records your screen as well. So it's got the screen, you clicking, yes, I sign, here's my details, here's my fake scrawl on a screen, which never comes out quite right. And you can see my face as I'm talking to it. And at the other end of this video call is someone else, the witness, who is also watching my screen do this thing and watching my face as I'm doing it. And then similarly, they can do their bit, again, recording the stuff. And yes, it's a bit more involved. The technology involved is a bit more complex, and the people process is a little bit more complex. They've got to have a webcam, and they've got to be able to set up the screen sharing and whatever else. But the technology is there. It exists. It's possible. People could do this. And yeah, that strikes me as a far more actually. It strikes me far more as a solution that actually solves the problem. I haven't seen anyone doing it yet. Maybe it's out there and I just haven't discovered it.
Yeah, or no one's quite solved the problem clearly.
I think although obviously your witness has to be physically present, it doesn't solve the problem I was expecting it to solve. According to the press releases, though, solicitors are saying that it reduces their paperwork turnaround from a week or so on average to about a day on average, because they just don't have the post issue to contend with. So there may still be benefit in it, even if it's solving a different problem to what I was hoping. Yeah,
well, I know a lot of the mortgages I do, we have to get independent legal advice, ILAs as they call them in the trade, because all of the properties we do through the limited company are personally guaranteed. So then you need independent legal advice to make sure that you understand the ramifications. The fact that if
you must have listened to that lecture so many times.
I know, and I have sat in a room with a solicitor many times and listened to the same information, which is absolutely right. But now we do it on FaceTime. It's still the same, but so it does happen. But yeah, I think with the digital stamping and IP addresses, but I do think that is a very. I mean, you're right. There's still enough of opportunity even now to fake it. I think it probably just grows exponentially once you digitise. But it seems like it's the way it's got to go, because as soon as you say that, well, it can take us a week or it can take us a day. Given where we're at as a nation, surely we should be able to solve that problem and do it in a day and reduce that conveyancing element.
You would hope, wouldn't you?
You would.
And yes, apparently you can now. So there we go. I'll include a link to the DocuSign information on this, and people can go and have a look if they're really curious.
And if you've ever queried on the fact that you've seemed to have witnessed several of my documents but don't recall ever seeing them, just think it's all fine. Nothing undue happened.
Yes, I won't comment. I think we are out of time, though. So it just comes to me to say thank you to everyone for listening. I hope our ramblings have been maybe entertaining or interesting or whatever. But however you have found them, whatever you have done from the information you've heard, please drop us a note. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. You can visit our website for show notes and a contact form on thebusinessofproperty.com. And we look forward to hearing from you and talking to you again next week.